Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another Alex on Tech and ITY video. I'm with Dave Glover. He's the Transformation Manager and CTO at Salmat. Welcome to the program.
Pleasure to be here.
Now, we have a bit of construction noise going on in the background because we're in North Sydney, so apologies for that. But look, you're going through a bit of ongoing migration and construction of your own with a bunch of cloud services and infrastructure. But before we get there, can you please just give us a quick wrap on what Salmat does today in 2017 and a bit of its history and a bit of your own history in the world of tech?
Sure, I'll be delighted. Salmat's been around almost 38 years now, and started off in a small room in Auburn delivering letterbox material to local Sydney areas. And it's grown through acquisition and organic growth over the last 36 years, and we're now a multi-channel marketing solutions company, and we're also a contact centre business. So for example, we deliver letterbox material, and we hit 6.5 million households 104 times a year with about 40 million catalogues each delivery.
And that's with your own distribution network too?
Yeah, we have 13,000 distributors working for us and doing that delivery on our behalf. So logistically, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and with cloud, web design, SEO, SEM, distribution, all those things, that's clearly a lot of differing infrastructures that need to be modernised and managed.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, like I said, the genesis of the company is a long time ago, but the acquisition and growth through acquisition has seen us build a mixture of technologies to meet all of those different outcomes.
And what's your own journey, briefly, through tech coming to Salmat today as CTO?
Yeah, well, I've been here over 3 years now, but prior to that, I was the head of security and IT at Qantas, and prior to that, I was the head of Qantas Frequent Flyer IT. So I started off as a programmer. I've been around for 35 years, almost as long as Salmat, and just been an IT guy the entire time.
And you've obviously, in those positions, seen the incredible change that we've gone through.
Yeah, well, I guess I feel like I've seen a lot of change.
Yeah.
I remember buying the first IBM PC, and I regret to this day that I threw it away at one point in time. I'd love to still have that.
It'd be worth $250,000 or something, like the Apple One or something. Now, with all that experience and knowledge, I mean, like myself, Dad got me a computer when I was 4.5 in 1979, and I've seen all that change too, but I mean, you've seen it more professionally. And so when you arrived at Salmat, what was the state of the IT infrastructure? I mean, you're the transformation manager, digital transformation is a big keyword, and CTO. So they must have had you on the job to help us.
Well, like I said, it was quite a siloed organisation back in the day, and we were struggling with a mixture of technologies that we had acquired through the companies that we had bought. And to be honest with you, there was a struggle with, I guess, heterogeneous infrastructure, and also just a hygiene associated with managing multiple types of technology and keeping them all current. It was really problematic for us. One of the key challenges for us at that point in time was our old ERP solution, which was requiring replacement. It was at end of life, and we had a decision to make.
So what did you move to cloud first
Well, we sort of about the same time I arrived, we had a new CEO arrive, and he was a very forward-looking CEO, which was fantastic. I think having executive support for these things is fundamental. And we talked about cloud first as being our agenda, because it was 3 or 4 years ago now, and it seemed to be offer the characteristics of service that we were looking for, but we hadn't really proven it. So the catalyst for us to move was the ERP we had, our finance system, that was at end of life, and we were looking at spending a lot of money, from my perspective, to change the version number on it. We had a new CFO who had arrived. This is in December 2014. Arrived in about August. By the end of September, was saying to me, I need a new finance system. The old one's rubbish. I need to upgrade. And my question was, well, when do you need it by? And the answer was, well, July. And I said, well, what, next year? And yes, so we had less than 9 months from the CFO deciding that we needed to replace it. So the process pretty much was we decided that we didn't have any chance to do a wide sort of survey of the market, and we just needed essentially to pick one. The reality is we looked at 3 options, and Workday was picked as a left field because it ticked the cloud first objective we were trying to follow. And to be honest, we had no great expectation that it was going to meet all of our needs. But we really quickly came to the conclusion that Workday was a really credible solution. And on the basis of the evidence of other deployments, we could see that they have a track record of deploying within 6 months.
Yeah, which clearly, with the time pressures you would have had, that was important.
Oh, it was important. And it was really quite scary. So we actually, the project started 9th of January or 6th of January, I think it was, in 2015.
Yeah.
And we went live on the 1st of July. And
Perfect timing.
Yeah, exactly. That was the date. And
Yeah.
when the thing began, I was looking at plan B because I just couldn't believe that we were going to get this thing done in time and what we were going to do if it didn't work. So we had a new chart of accounts that we were working towards, which didn't work with the old finance system, so that was going to be a problem. Anyway, it quickly became apparent that it was going to work. We built 30 odd new integrations with banks and payroll systems and HR systems. We moved finance and HR into Workday. We were the first Workday customer in Australia to deploy finance. And it was sort of an incredible success. When we had gone live, it was the week after, we were all looking at each other and sort of really in wonder that it actually happened.
So I was going to say,
impressed.
you must have you made history as the first IT project that came in on time and on budget.
Well,
given how they normally don't.
I know, and it's still hard to believe. Many people spend 9 months selecting a solution, let alone selecting it and implementing it, and let alone doing finance and HR. And it's not as if we're a small company. We've got 3,500 people, so there was a lot of work to be done. But with the help of Workday, who were incredible, and starting with the agenda that we were willing to compromise, I guess we realised that because we were going down a configure-only path, that really we were more than likely going to have to make some decisions that didn't really suit us.
Yeah.
The reality is, though, that by the end of it, we hadn't really made any compromises, but we started with that thinking in mind.
Yeah.
We had no opportunity to customise. The only concession that Workday made was that if there was any localisation that we needed, they would do it. Yeah. So if there was something to do with Australian tax law or whatever that they had to cope with, they would do it.
Sure.
And we were convinced that was going to be the case. So even so, we expected there was going to be compromise, and once again, like I said, the reality was
pleasant
we
surprise,
didn't compromise. Yeah,
which is incredible. So clearly, migrating to Workday's cloud opened your eyes to the possibilities of other cloud opportunities within what is now quite a diverse business. So what were the other cloud solutions that you then decided to move to, and what are their purposes?
Okay, so I often reflect on that point in time. If Workday had been a failure, we'd still be sitting on premise. But the fact that it was such a success gave us that sort of confidence to move forward. Even so, we had already decided that we were going to move to Google G Suite. At the same time, we bought Workday, and we decided probably trying to deploy both at the same time.
And do they integrate with each other?
There's not a great deal of integration, no.
But they don't need to, right? Because
they're
different systems,
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things about the cloud. But so when we went live with Workday, the first thing we actually went out and bought was a single sign-on identity management solution. So
and which one was that?
Okta.
Okta, yep.
Yep. So we were very happy with Okta. They proved their capabilities in the space of a meeting.
Incredible.
So they had single sign-on working in 30 minutes, and so that and Okta have been great for us. We replaced our on-premise web proxies with Zscaler, which is a cloud-based web proxy, and then we deployed Google. We had 2 tranches of Google. So 1st of July we went live with Workday. Middle of October, I think it was maybe the end of October, we deployed Google to all of our information workers, about 1,200 people.
So that's all their emails and all of their document storage and other...
Yep.
And are you guys still using Microsoft Office, or are you doing it all through G Suite now, or is it a combination?
Well, we are doing it all through G Suite. There's an odd handful of people out there who still use Excel because they're accountants or Word because they're legal people. But the reality is the vast majority of people are totally dedicated to Google. And I keep an eye on what's going on and who's doing what and how many documents we write. And interestingly enough, the majority of new Google documents that are prepared are Google Sheets. Yep. So Sheets outnumbers docs and slides and everything. That's what we do most work in.
And obviously when you're retiring old infrastructure and you're moving to new cloud infrastructure, I mean, you go from one licensing model to another. But have you found that your licensing costs have lowered, or is it about the same?
I think it varies. I think we've got much more control over our licensing. I think the old model, and I don't want to pick any vendor in particular, but the old model tends to really try and lock you in and be very complicated. And to be honest, when we made our decision around Google, it was pretty much a P times Q decision. There was no complex, you get this set of state knives or you buy that and lock it in for 3. The alternatives were incredibly complicated. And there's one thing I really like about cloud, not necessarily the dollars that I pay, but the transparency I get around.
Cloud was meant to make everything much simpler, and clearly for you it has.
Well, it has, and I think the example of the Okta situation. Workday was a great success. The fact that Okta plugged into Workday with literally 30 minutes worth of effort, it proves the fact that I think that we've moved to a world of best of breed rather than best of suite. So people used to buy these horrendously big suites because they were supposed to work together.
Do everything,
and get rid of all your integration problems. But all of the new stuff is built to integrate.
Yeah, and you mentioned there was 30 integrations you did with Workday, banks and other things. So that's clearly been a smooth experience too.
Yeah, well, that was where most of the effort was. Unfortunately, I had the job of sort of overseeing all of those integrations. But, we had to get banks.
Your hair's not great, so and you
Yeah.
still have it there, so
Yeah.
I can say it's pretty good.
Yeah, thanks. We had to get the banks to move quickly, and we had third parties which were most problematic. Quite a lot of the integrations were internal integrations that we built, billing integrations and that sort of thing. But the reality is we got them done, and because the tool set for doing them is out of the box.
Much more mature.
More
mature. We're in 2017 now, not 2000, talking about SaaS for the first time.
Yeah, well, I think that's the message, that it's certainly mature, enterprise ready. You'd be nuts not to be using it, in my opinion.
Now, you mentioned you were doing this transition in 2015. We're now in 2017. So, what has the timeline been for your migration? And what's left to be done still?
There's always more to do. So our focus has been initially starting with trying to replace our back of house processes with software as a service. So the objective has been, let's get rid of the hygiene issues of supporting and managing infrastructure that's relentlessly requiring upgrades and software versions and blah 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 and patches, and get that issue off our plate so we can focus on what we do for our clients. So I didn't quite finish the story on software as a service, but so we are in the process at the moment of replacing our on-premise contact center solution with a cloud-based solution, which we're really happy about. We replaced our service management solution with a service called Fresh Service. We are looking and playing with Google Cloud Platform. We're a Salesforce customer, and we are also an AWS customer. So for a lot of our customer-facing solutions, particularly in the digital business, we are an AWS customer, and we're running more infrastructure as a service or some of the platform services rather than software as a service, because we're building solutions for them, but we're trying to minimise the effort we put into the infrastructure and focus on the solutions.
So many disparate, different cloud services all working together, or at least you're able to make them all to work together so smoothly.
Well, I think once again they're made to work together. So a good example is we bought with Okta. We bought single sign-on, but
and that's part of the security aspect. As well.
So it's and with Okta we've also enabled the MFA. So, we challenge people with multiple authentication requests all over the place. But we also bought their Workday as a master solution, which essentially automates the creation and deletion of accounts based on people arriving in Workday. So once you become an employee, your accounts get created. Once you stop being an employee, your accounts disappear. And even something as simple as that, which I know from other organisations is a real problem to deal with, has made life easy for us. So we have, in our contact centre business, quite a lot of churn. It's the nature of contact centres that people don't, there's not a great deal of tenure. So you've got 200 or 300 people coming and going every month. We sort of absolutely guarantee that their 300 accounts have been created and 300 accounts have been deleted. And that sort of stuff is making life so much easier for us. But it's an indication of how well these tools work together.
Well, there are some of the metrics that you're able to measure success by, especially when you so many different cloud platforms that you're successfully working with for different parts of the business.
Yeah. So when you look at, say, something like single sign-on, what can I single sign on to? Every cloud platform, that's for sure. I have trouble single signing on to some of my legacy stuff that's inside my perimeter because they're not built for that. But it's one of those tickets to play in the cloud business is that you open up all your APIs so that other people can plug into them. So it has made that sort of stuff really easy. The impediments to moving.
I was going to say that. What were the main challenges or obstacles? It doesn't sound like there were huge ones in the way that you may have initially imagined, as we were saying right at the very beginning of this interview.
Yeah, well, I think we anticipated quite a lot of challenges, and the reality is that they haven't become as onerous as we thought. So probably the first one was, okay, we're going down a configure-only world. That's going to limit what we can do. And we quickly realised, well, that's not the case. And the reality is, in this configure-only world, there is so many features arriving on a weekly or monthly basis that you're sort of overwhelmed with new features, and new features that arrive without you having to do anything. You just notice that they're there, or you just get an email saying this new feature's been added. So that piece is really quite straightforward. We were also a little bit concerned that we'd have trouble with adoption within the sort of employee base.
Well, because they may have been wedded to the old ways, and
Yeah.
people don't want to change, but clearly that hasn't.
Well, it hasn't. So with Workday we put a lot of effort into organisational change management, and everybody was up to speed and ready to go. And I won't say excited about it. People were never excited about stuff like that, but they were well prepared.
And they came around quickly.
Yeah.
Once they started playing with it.
And so for Workday, that was the precursor to Google, which was going to be much more disruptive.
Yeah.
We sort of, one of the reasons we picked Google is we wanted it to be a bit disruptive. One of the things that our CEO at the time did was he asked everybody what they would do if he was a CEO, and one of the common responses was, we're too siloed and we don't communicate and collaborate enough. So when we announced that we were deploying Google, we said, well, this is contemporary stuff, you should be used to it, you probably use it at home, and you know what, it answers your questions. You suggested we need to solve this collaboration problem, and that's exactly what we aim to do. And you'll see all of our rooms are now equipped with Google Hangouts, and I track the number of Hangouts we run each week, and there's a lot. We run a lot of Hangouts. Tomorrow we're running our town hall. Everybody across 4 countries will be tuned into that town hall, and it's a revelation in terms of how much the communication has improved. And
it's a revolution too.
It's a revolution, and we.
I mean, it's great to see that all these promises these companies make. I mean, it's coming true.
Well, in this
Normally
case,
it's not what happens.
And so an example of the Hangouts. As the Hangouts increase, our travel costs have reduced. So we've taken about.
There's a licensing cost saving. You're not paying license fees to the airlines for a seat, a literal seat. So that's good. I mean, that's really it's heartening to see this, because the history of IT migrations and all the rest is littered with cost blowouts and anger at IT, and IT's promise is finally coming true.
Yeah, well, like I said, I think it's if you start on the right foot and you don't expect everything. So Google's a good example where people had sort of low expectations about what you could do with Google Sheets and what you could do with Google Docs and slides.
And they got surprised.
And they were surprised, And you know what? There's not much you can't do.
Well, and Google, Google G Suite has evolved over I mean, how many years have been available now? Several. It's not just didn't just come out yesterday.
Oh, it's been around for years and years, really. But it's really fully functional. And my view is the world has changed. I think the competitor, a lot of what they do and their bells and whistles are around printed stuff. And nobody prints anymore.
Well, they call it a digital transformation, right? And it's not transforming your printer fleet into a new one. It's transforming the old paper ways into all digital ways, and you're doing that.
But the trouble people go to get perfect alignment of everything, and tables of contents, all that sort of stuff, which is beautiful if you're printing a book, but it's not really relevant if you're reading things online.
Sure. Well, also, if you're doing that, it's for your annual report, and you give it to the graphic designer guys.
Exactly.
And they'll do it. It's not something that you'll be doing. So I think I may have sort of already asked this, but what's next to migrate? What's next on your plate?
Oh, look, it hasn't quite finished yet. So one of the things we were actually really looking hard at and just about to embark on is software-defined wide area network. We've run 2 trials to date over the last 6 or 8 months, and have been really impressed with what we've seen. And the reality is, because we've moved so much of our stuff out of on-premise to the cloud, the idea that we have a wide area network that brings all of our traffic back to these data centers.
And optimizes it and keeps it more secure and all that sort of stuff.
But so the data centers aren't where everything is anymore. They're in Workday, or it's in Google, it's in Salesforce. So I don't need a wide area network anymore. And with SD-WAN, I can, it is incredible the response we're getting with it. The proof of concept has been really, really encouraging, and the cost of the connections we're using to deliver the same sort of outcomes are incredibly lower than the expensive stuff that we previously bought. So it really is 2 things. One, the technology is really now mature and is really effective, and 2, what was in our data center or in our perimeter is moving.
And it's securely out there. But
absolutely.
But it's still part of your internal network, but it's out there.
It's out there, so it doesn't matter where you come from, you're going to get challenged multiple times to be able to access it. All of the partners we use have an incredible focus on security. So, I mean, Workday being the first it really impressed us with their relentless focus on security. And well,
we hear so many people being hacked, and you're dealing with such large volumes of customer data. So they must be asking you, hey, what are you doing to secure us?
Well, exactly. Yeah. Well, that is true. And when we say many people have been hacked, I haven't ever seen the stats about the amount of data that's been stolen from on-premise versus the amount of data that's been stolen from or breached in the cloud. It doesn't seem to be a stat that's out there, but I tell you, there's a lot of on-premise stuff.
The mandatory disclosure laws are coming into play next year, so we hopefully will find out. But what else, just before we get towards the end of the interview, what other things has Workday done for you since that initial integration? You must have worked with them and to add other features, or maybe given them ideas, hey, this needs to be improved in your system?
Well, we have business people who work primarily with the Workday account managers and whatever, and there's regular conferences and that sort of thing, and they have an online way of standing up ideas and having people vote on them and whatever. So it's very sort of crowdsourcing approach to improving it. I mean, Workday is continually adding new features, and to be honest with you, quite a few people ask me about Workday, and the reality is it's no longer a problem, so I don't pay much attention to it.
Because it's working, it's ticking along nicely.
Yeah, it's ticking along, so why do I need to worry about that? I need to worry about other stuff.
Absolutely.
So today the problems are, well, how do I deal with the rest of my on-premise infrastructure? How am I going to deal with that? How do I solve my software-defined network problems? I'm really keen to get Chromebooks onto all my desks as much as possible because, once again, they're super secure, they're super reliable, they're inexpensive, they perform really well. I've been using one for well over a year and a half now, and I just would never go back. It's
the ultimate G Suite computer, it's virus free and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's incredible. So it's really a positive thing. If I'm looking at what are the challenges that we're really facing now moving forward, I would say it's getting a better handle on how we're managing infrastructure as a service. Right, and that's a whole change of approach for your infrastructure teams and how to deal with that, and the whole moving more to a DevOps sort of world, and people's roles and accountabilities change in that model, and it's very confronting to people, and so the changes we've made to date have been less confronting, and this is more difficult. It's more organisational and people related. But we need to do that. We need to be able to work more effectively in a multi-cloud environment or multi-infrastructure as a service environment, and make sure that we're not locked in anywhere, make sure that we have consistent security across all of the solutions we have, make sure we've got the ability to shift workload as we would like. So that's the complex bit.
Given that you're in the business of helping other businesses be successful in business and distribution and sales and SEM and SEO and websites, do you think you might also have like a digital transformation practice that will help some of these customers of yours go through the same cloud journey because you've had all this hands-on success at it? Or am I just reaching too far into beyond the remit of Salmat?
Oh, look, I think so. I mean, I'm happy to be an advocate of it because I think you'd be nuts if you weren't doing what we're doing today. But there's an awful lot of people out there who
are already doing that.
Are already doing it, or better at pitching the message. And my opinion, like I said, there's one thing that I've learned: you don't need as much help as you might think you do.
Yeah.
And the people.
And you're busy enough doing the work you're doing now.
I am. But in terms of how many people need their hands held the entire way, I'm not convinced that that's as big as people think it might be. It's fear that's keeping people away. We've worked with some really cool, small, niche companies who've come in and helped us take a little step, and then they left. And that's the model today. You don't sign up for some annuity with a company that's going to keep your Z-scaler running forever, because once it's deployed, it works. There's nothing to be done.
They didn't give you the fish, they taught you how to catch it yourself.
You might say that.
So if you look
could possibly go.
It's just twisting the old saying.
Yeah.
So if you look in the crystal ball, where will you be on this path in a decade? It must be, the challenges must be beyond cloud. We'll be in a post-cloud world then, because we'll be cloud.
Yeah, look, I don't know. I mean, I look at the industry and wonder what's going to happen next. And in my opinion, that one of the things that's definitely happening is that the outsourcing is changing totally. So SaaS is the new outsourcing.
Yeah.
And those old providers who were there managing your applications or your infrastructure, I don't know what they're going to be doing in the next 5 years. There won't be a job for them because there's experts managing the infrastructure around Google or cloud or Workday or whatever. And so that line of business goes. One thing that worries me a bit is one of the things I like about today is the best of breed. So when I look at Okta, what do? They do identity management. Yeah. They do it really, really well. Yeah. As soon as they start wanting to do something else,
they might lose focus or something.
They'll lose focus. Yeah. And I don't want to pick any particular provider, but there's some out there that started with a certain agenda and now are trying to be all things to all people, and they're sort of
replicating the problems of the old days.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot to be said for those organisations who just know their onions, stick to a certain area of expertise, and just be really, really good at it.
Yeah. Well, hard to get fired if you're doing that, and obviously if that company has to change with the times for something else, well, they will. But yes. So look, at this point of the interview, I always like to change tack completely, and and just simply ask if you can share some of the best advice you've received in life, whoever it may have been from, to help you get where you are today.
Yeah. So look, it's a really good question, and I can think of a few occasions when people have given me some real motivation. Yeah. But I guess I think more about the people that I've observed and who have been really good at what they do and try to learn from them. So, I mean, I had one boss when I was at Qantas who was the strategy genius. I mean, and watching what he did and how he worked through strategy, it taught me a lot. I had another manager who was superb at getting the right people to work in his teams, and that's a really cool thing to learn, right? Some people just think it doesn't matter who you got, you can get the right outcome, but all of his effort was put into recruiting the right people. And another guy who just set super clear objectives. So I think back to the people, that have really sort of set a really good example about how to do stuff, and that's I find myself, for example, there was a legal guy that I used to work with. His name is Lincoln, and quite frequently when I'm looking at contracts, I say to myself, so what would Lincoln do? And it's trying to channel what you've seen other people do is, to me, the best way of getting advice. It may be indirect, but you admire people and you try and replicate what they've been doing.
Well, that's really good advice. So, what's your final message to IT Wire viewers and readers, and for your current and future customers?
Well, for IT Wire viewers and customers, my view is that really the cloud is credible, enterprise ready, and if you're not doing something with it, you're missing out an opportunity for your company, and you're missing out an opportunity for yourself. It's not scary, it's not edgy, it's just the way things are, and it's inevitable, right? It's just absolutely inevitable, and if you're avoiding it, then you need to rethink why you're avoiding it and start paying a bit more attention and putting your toe in the water. In terms of our customers, watch out. We're working on a bunch of new things, and like I said earlier on, clearing the decks of our sort of back of house maintenance problems and whatever. We are now in a position where we can focus on doing new stuff. So that's really our agenda at the moment, is building out new capability for our customers rather than focusing on back of house issues that generate no revenue and do nothing for our customers.
Well, Dave Glover, thank you very much for sharing your journey with the cloud, with Workday, Okta, and all your other providers, and wish you success in all the rest of your migration, and hope to talk to you again in the future.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.